Welcome to Kick Back with Chris. Kick Back with Chris, the martial arts podcast.
Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kick Back with Chris. I hope you've all had a great couple of weeks since we last spoke. Lots been going on, lots of developments, things to talk about. I'm actually going to keep this opening section a little bit brief today, on the basis that I've actually, truth be told, I've recorded this one a little bit out of order today, just with it being the half-term holidays and family commitments and that sort of thing. My time's been taken up away from recording, away from the gym. So I've actually already done the interview with Matt Stait and actually with Matt Chapman as well. Don't tell anybody, but no. So it's a little bit out of order, but what I can say is some great information shared by these guys today, you really do want to stick around and check that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through the little bits of news that were posted within our new podcast martial arts event promotion group. As I've already mentioned, I am just going to be sticking to what's posted in there now. I'm spending way too much time trawling through Facebook looking for news pieces, so if you've got something you want submitting, post it in that group and I will give it a mention. So the first one is actually posted by my good, slightly crazy, bonkers friend, Mr. Danny Bigley, who actually posted this. It was right on the cut-off last time around for last week's episode, or the week before, should I say. And on November the 17th, he's doing a Children in Need 100-person kumite. It's going to be at Matrix Martial Arts Academy in Leicester. If you want to learn more about this one, I will post the event in the show notes. I'm always well up for anything to do with raising money, especially for kids. So if you go along, have a look at the show notes, check it out. I'm going to actually go and have a quick look myself, see if it's something else I can help out with or support at all anymore. The next piece is from Nathan, who's been on before, talking about the UTX Forms Challenge. This is going to be taking place on the 11th of November, so very, very soon, at the Greenwood Academy. So that's 220 Farnborough Road, Birmingham. There's going to be traditional forms, creative forms, extreme forms, tricking workshops, all sorts of stuff going on. If you want to register online, you can go to the UTX Academy /UTX-Forms-Challenge. I'll put that in the show notes because I know it's probably a different one to remember. But they're going to be doing tricking camps, freestyle forms camps, that sort of thing. They've got a whole host of people that are going to be there teaching. Competitors and spectators alike are welcome. You can give them a ring on 07791 204 675. Alternatively, you can visit the website, which is utxacademy.com. Again, I will include that in the show notes. So last week, I had a slightly controversial topic of non-contact based martial arts, my views on it. I've had lots of feedback from people over the last week. It's been really interesting chatting with people who over the years have had experience, and some people put some good points across, and good to chat, and it's great to have this open forum, and it's something that I do want to do more of going forward. So if you've got any suggestions for topics, things to cover, drop us a message on the forum, give me a PM, give us a phone call, whatever. I've also, just this morning, actually, just announced one of the main ways that I actually finance this podcast is through my online kicking tutorial website and courses, which some of you have very, very kindly got on board with. I'm actually in the process of writing up a third course, and this one's going to be focusing on pad work, which is one that I've been asked to do quite a bit since the first one I did back in the summer. So I'm going to be doing some pad work. It's going to be a little bit different. Obviously, my good friend Mr. Matthew Chapman, who's going to be joining us later on, he's the Mittmaster. He's got some great pad drills focused on different kick work. But the stuff that I'm going to do, it's going to be a little bit different to the stuff that he's done. Different ideas, just different ways that I like to teach and train kick work on pads. So there's no stepping on toes or anything like that. No competition. I'd be stupid to try and compete with Matt anyway, because he's the king of the online courses in that respect. So what we're going to do is we're going to get straight into our interview with Mr. Matt Stait, because it is a long one. I didn't want to cut this one down too much because there's some great information in there, and lots of stuff to people to pick up on and learn. And I would hate to have missed any of it out. The only things that I will cut out are my stupid mistakes, of which I made plenty of today, because I was freezing cold in the gym when we set up, and I'm going to blame that anyway. not the sleepless nights. It's definitely cold. Anyway, without any further ado, enjoy, and I will catch you on the other side.
You're listening to Kick Back with Chris, the martial arts podcast, brought to you by www.onlinekicking.co.uk.
Okay, guys, so joining us now, we have Mr. Matt Stait, who's very kindly offered to come on and have a little bit of a chat about his quite extensive history in well, you're doing all sorts. I always like to do a little bit of a read-up on our guests before they come on, and I did actually know a little bit about Matt's training beforehand from what I've seen on social media and what I've heard from him, other people who've trained with him and things, and but I didn't realise until I started reading up on you how much stuff you've been up to in your short 25 years on this planet.
Quite, yeah.
So, I know a little bit that I read up on. I noticed that you started out in the 1980s, which is when I started out actually, so probably about the same age actually. And you started off in boxing. What was it that led you to down that path, or made you decide to take up that as your first sort of combat experience?
Well, the short answer to that really was I was still quite young at the time, and we'd moved to a new town with a new school, and it was a little bit on the rocky side, shall we say. So my mother decided the best thing to do would be to learn some basic skills to defend yourself, and there happened to be a boxing gym just down the road, and so that was my first sort of forage into the world of martial arts.
Yeah, and a good start as well, I would say. It's a fantastic thing to start in. You could do much worse than starting in boxing first thing, because a lot of people kind of do it the other way around. I certainly tried it that way around and wasn't very successful, I must say. But yeah, how old were you when you started out then?
Oh yeah, well, the thing is with this, I was still only young, so I was probably about 9 or 10 at the time.
Okay.
So
yeah.
So we did some of the training, but that was as far as it went. I must admit I wasn't actually into that for very long, and I came back to it years later. But as a grounding, it was very, very good, because it taught a lot of the skills that are sometimes missed in other formats. Your basic, your head movements, all that kind of stuff, the footwork, just a lot of really good core valuable skills that can really enhance everything else that people do.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So what was it that led you to other arts afterwards? Because I was reading you training quite a lot of different things. What was it that you moved on to next? And was there a reason why, or?
Yeah, well, at the time, obviously Bruce Lee was sort of absolutely huge, and to my dismay, it turned out that nobody did any kicking in boxing. And then the next thing on the list then was there was a judo class down at the local leisure centre in the town that I was in. Bear in mind, this is going back when there wasn't a black belt on every street corner kind of thing, and so it was basically what was available in the area. And the other thing was judo. But then again, I found that it didn't have the kicks that I was after at the time, and that sort of, I didn't understand judo at the time. So it's my bad for not realising just how effective and really useful a system judo was, because as a child I was like, I want to be like Bruce Lee, and I don't want to be doing these things that aren't like that. So so it's kind of one of those where I again with the judo, I didn't really appreciate what I was doing at the time. It was only years later, when you start to sort of discover stuff on a much deeper level, that you realise the gift that was given to you during that time, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can follow you with that one exactly, because it's similar to what I did. I mean, I wanted to do some martial arts, and also my dad wanted me to get involved with something, and I was given the option of rugby or judo. And it was one or the other. It had to be one or the other. And I wasn't, I've said this before, I wasn't right up for getting wet and muddy on a Sunday morning. Didn't really like that idea. And I went and had a look at one judo class, but they weren't doing the things that I'd seen in films. And, bearing in mind, I'm sort of 8 or 9 years old at the time. So, I completely get it. And then I saw a taekwondo club, and I thought, that's the thing that I want to do. But I was just a kid. But it was the anchor. It was what sort of got me going, and it was my base style. And then from there, as you say, as you get older, you realise, the bigger facet. There's more to it really than how you see it as a child. You obviously listed on your website, just a quick look through all the different things you did. You competed as well, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I went from that. I had a bit of time off, as you do,
Yeah.
and you find out as a teenager the wonder of girls and things like that, and so sort of fell out of it for a while. But then, unfortunately, I lost my father at a young age, and that sort of propelled me, if you like, to sort of rethink where I was going and what my life was doing and all of that, and that made me rediscover martial arts, if you will. And I was very, very fortunate at that time to have a local group that was just down the road from me that I didn't realize were at such a high level. And so I went there just, looking to start something again. It was Waterloo Karate.
Okay.
And it was a wonderful place in Bristol run by Sensei Bob Flowers with Sensei Arthur Meek from Bridgewater. And I was with those for a good few years, and that was really where I had my grounding, if you will. It was Sensei Arthur and Bob that instilled all the groundwork of everything that I've done moving forward. Without them, there's no way I would be where I am today, and that's something I'm very grateful for, because a lot of people say that some of the traditional systems aren't very useful and all the rest of it. But I mean, my own experience is that without that framework and without those building blocks, if you like, and that foundation, everything else wouldn't be as strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of times the thing that a lot of people overlook is it's not just the physical elements as well. I mean, the school that I trained at as a child, and I know a lot of people now they tend to look at sort of Olympic Taekwondo systems a lot differently now than what they used to, and that's just me looking in as an outsider. Now, I used to train in the system, but I remember they were hard classes. They were difficult classes, and I remember sometimes some of the things that we were doing, it did make me question, why am I doing this? Do I want to keep going back? I did want to keep going back, and some of the things were mentally quite tough as well as physically quite tough, and I'm thankful for that grounding. Whether the system's effective, shall we say, or not, it was the training, it was the learning environment that we were in, and it was the sort of the life messages, I suppose, that I picked up whilst there. I didn't realise at the time, but looking back on it now, I can see that those hard classes were a good start point that have led me on to things like this now, talking on a podcast, and all of the things that was that learning experience that took me from that shy little bullied boy to where I am now. It was down to that start. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you've very much highlighted one of the main things with modern martial arts, if you like, is that people seem to forget that in this modern world where we want everything now. Yeah. There is a time frame. You can't become great at something in a week or a month. It takes years of dedication, and as you say, the self-discipline, the mindset, the prioritizing, all the things that is necessary to follow the journey along. Where they're great skills to have. I mean, let's be honest. You can teach somebody how to punch somebody in the face quite quickly, literally. And give me an hour, and I'll teach you how to punch somebody in the face reasonably well. But that isn't the story, is it? That isn't what martial arts is about as a whole, or it shouldn't be. Yeah, again, and it's I think with the advent of social media, it's just like the discussion I was having on last week's episode. It's a good thing, because in some ways it's got people to speak about these subjects more, but at the same time, it's given some people the opportunity to be quite vocal on some things that maybe they're not necessarily have much experience in. They have an opinion on it, which is fine. We're all entitled to an opinion, but sometimes I do hear or read some things and think, but you've not actually experienced it, so
absolutely,
it's difficult looking in. But going up, some people are very critical of schools that will have students going up and down in lines doing blocking sets for half an hour. What's the point in that? Yeah, but the task in itself, having to perform and go through that extended period of doing something that you don't want to do as an 8-year-old, it's a good learning experience, because life is full of things that we don't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
we have to do.
I think a really relevant point on that is that myself personally, and I'm sure a lot of other people, I didn't realise the value of what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
It was only years later that became apparent.
Absolutely, and and there are still people. I mean, we push for it. It is harder now, though. I'll be honest, it is harder now as an instructor to push those elements, because we're living with the now generation, aren't we? The pick up and put down parents, so to speak, and they've got Netflix and YouTube and Xbox and PlayStation and 520 whatever channels, and everything's instantaneous.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, you can. The thing is, we can get controversial about it, and and start pointing the finger of blame and things like that. But you're absolutely right. Society is just, everything's so quick now. And I mean, years and years ago, number one, finding a black belt of any degree was a task. Number two, finding a club that you could go to was something as well. And you certainly didn't go there and start demanding this, that, and the other. You fitted in or left. It's that simple, really. Yes. Whereas now it is. I agree with you in a large respect that it is a constant battle to try and keep everyone engaged and everything, where the old me quite often just wants to say to them, well, look, I'm here as a teacher and in a teacher capacity. If you don't want to learn, just don't come. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. But then I also understand, as you rightly said, there's so many draws on people's time and effort now, and money's a lot tighter than it used to be, and nobody's got the time for anything, even with all these so-called time-saving devices, that it is almost a luxury for a lot of the kids, for their parents to bring them, and sometimes I think we do have to appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely spot on. Okay, so later on you moved into the security industry. Can you share a little bit about that and any sort of more memorable experiences along the way?
Yeah, of course. Well, that sort of ties back to some of the things you were saying about people having opinions about things and not necessarily having first-hand experience and stuff. And this was, I think, the easiest way to explain this was, it was an incredible eye-opener. The learning curve was just so steep, it was ridiculous. At the time I was doing reasonably well. At the time I'd been training in martial arts for a good number of years. I'd competed at reasonable levels, and I was young, I was fit, I was active, and I thought I was pretty good. But it turns out that a lot of the stuff that I've been learning, I was really struggling to make it work for me. I was really struggling to find ways to get it to be effective. Now, I'm not suggesting that what I was learning wasn't effective. What I'm saying is that I, for whatever reason, hadn't figured out how to make it successful, how to make it work. Mm-hmm. And so the learning curve was very steep, because it went a bit like this. You tried something, it didn't work, you got punched, and you went, okay, let's try it again. And so there wasn't really a lot of room for forgiveness in that. And that was one of the things that I found really interesting about it, because there were things like, aggression and overwhelm and stuff like that, things that I'd never really heard about in the martial arts training beforehand. You do your physical skills and things, but what I was seeing a lot was very high level martial artists. I mean, we're talking not just black belts, but quite high downgrades, coming very unstuck very quickly, because they couldn't deal with the aggression and what actually happens to the human body and the overwhelm of all of that. And that I found really, really interesting, because that was, as learning curves go, that was a pretty steep one.
Yeah, I know. I can obviously not at the same level as you, nowhere near, but I remember having experiences in my sort of teens, as you do. You say the wrong things to the wrong people, as we all do. And I remember thinking, we do this in class every week. We pad up and we fight. I'm fine. And very, very quickly at that age, I realised it's not the same. Not the same.
No, there are so many variables and so many differences. It's something that I sort of, when I speak to people about it, I explain the good bad guy philosophy. I talk about the pantomime of violence, all these other things that actually lead up to and around the fight. I mean, if you think about when you're training, or how a lot of people train, is they will be in their sports hall, gym, whatever it might be. They'll be dressed in their uniform, their outfit, so they'll be psychologically ready for that, and they will also be in a position where they're amongst friends, it's comfortable, they've taken themselves there by choice, they know that there's the worst repercussion there is maybe an accidental injury. And so when you take all of that out of the equation, and it's it's in the moment, it's now, there's a definite consequence to action, there's real fear, there's the unknown, there's the overwhelm, the psychological, not being prepared mentally, all of that. You add all of that together, and the physical skills suddenly become secondary.
So, is this a career that's taken you all over to various different places and working with different types of people? Is it?
Yeah, I've been obviously a lot around the UK and stuff like that, predominantly UK based. Okay. Two good reasons for that. I have been asked on several occasions to travel abroad and do things in various other countries as well. But my honest answer to that is I've spent a lot of years training martial arts and self-defense and things like that, and very little training with weapons and so forth. So although I have done some weapons training and, I'm proficient on a range, if you like, I have absolutely no real clue in the real world and don't pretend to have. So if I'm going to a country where firearms are prevalent and commonplace, then my skill set really isn't going to apply as well. So
Sure.
It was a case of understanding your own personal limitations and knowing what you're good at and what you're not. So, my forte, if you like, was the fact that although I'm a reasonably sized chap, I'm not one of those overly large guys that stand out in a room. And I'm also, skilled in martial arts to the degree that I could utilize that if it was necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see you also run a full-time school as well. When did that open, and what got you into that side of things? Was there a point? I know I myself, I remember it was a very spur of the moment thing when I suddenly decided to open a full-time school. I'd been teaching for somebody else, but I just suddenly thought, actually, no, I want to do this now. So was there anything similar for you, or could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, like a lot of people, I was sort of brought in on classes as an assistant instructor, which was 1996, I think, if memory serves.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of years teaching out of other people's gyms and things like that. And I just decided that it was something I wanted to do. At the time, I was doing a number of different things, and it was a case of, well, how do I want to spend my time? I was an operations manager for a security company. I was working the doors, and I was, teaching part-time, and it was a case of, well, what's actually gonna make me happy in the long term? Yeah. And I thoroughly enjoy teaching. I really enjoy what it does for people and watching people progress, and so that was the choice that I sort of made, and so jumped in with both feet, really not having a clue about any of it. And again, that's something a lot of people misunderstand, and that's where people like Gordon come to the fore, because we are, I don't know about you, but I'm a teacher. I am not necessarily a businessman. So all the outside stuff that comes with running a gym is something that, has to be learned along the way.
Oh, absolutely. I all the things that you could do wrong when it comes to opening a full-time school, I did them all pretty much when I started out. But what I'd gone from teaching for somebody else full-time, 6 days a week. So I understood the processes of running the business side of the martial arts element of the business, so to speak. But I had no appreciation for anything like insurance, business rates, planning permission, all of this stuff. I just went into it all completely clueless. Didn't have a clue. I've mentioned this before on previous episodes. Make sure you know about all that stuff first. Yeah, I remember moving into the building and the landlord's like, "Oh, you don't need to worry about planning permission. Don't change your use. No, you don't need to worry about that. I'll sort that for you." No, he didn't. So yeah, I learned all this on the fly in the first sort of 12 months, which was a very, very steep learning curve for me, shall we say. I'm good at kicking pads, but maths and anything like that, horrific. So I've got a good accountant as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one of those, isn't it, where the general public are like, "Wow, you must have a fantastic job doing 4 hours a day."
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, we've all. I don't think there's a full-time instructor anywhere that's not had that one. Oh, but all you do is you just turn up for a few hours a night and, teach a few things, then go home. Oh, of course, yes, that's what we do. That's all we do. Nobody sees any of the other stuff that goes on. But we're getting better at that now, as you say, with Gordon's advice. We're starting to give these jobs to other people, aren't we?
Well, the thing is, we can't all be good at everything, can we? And that's really where the line is. I mean, we just have to accept that. As instructors and teachers, that's where our passion is, and that's what we want to do. But to be able to do that, we have to facilitate it with all the other stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, well, I'm I was just joking. The joke of it is really, though, I'm terrible at this. Which was something that I joke with Gordon all the time. Delegating is one of my worst things. I'm terrible at it. Absolutely terrible. And it's the martial artist, what's the phrase? Control freak. We want to be. It's my school. It needs to be done the way I need it to be done, and it's very difficult. And I'm getting better at it. It's taken me over 16 years, but I am getting better at it now. It's good in a way. I think it all harks back to what we talked about earlier on about the discipline thing, about having it drummed into us to work hard, and we get what we put in, but we've got to work smart as well, haven't we? That's the thing. Right.
Absolutely, we tried to, yeah.
Absolutely. So, more recently, you became an author, I believe. How did you find that experience? And can you tell us a little bit about your first publications?
Yeah, well, I decided to write a book a couple of years ago because I was forever basically being asked questions. What was it like? What was it? What did I do? How did that happen? What was it like working with those people? And one of the other things that I found a lot is that there were books out on the subject. I mean, there were obviously some really cracking books, Jeff Thompson's Watch My Back, so on and so forth. So there were lots of really good books within the genre, but there were also quite a lot of books that sort of painted quite an unrealistic picture, if you like, about what the work is actually like. And so the impetus, if you will, for me was I actually wanted to tell a story that was sort of the reality of it, as opposed to glorifying violence or just an endless repeat of stories of how I beat somebody up or something like that. That's not what I wanted from it, and so it's basically more a truism, if you like, of the actual industry itself, and as it says on the cover, there is violence in the book. Violence is part of the job, but it's not glorified, and it's not it's not a book about how hard I am, because that's the last thing that I am. And I think the book is, for me, it was just a way of telling my own stories, if you will. Everybody has them. They say that everybody has a book in them, don't they?
Mine. I don't know if anybody want to read mine, or they might get half a chapter in and go, "Oh, this guy's crazy," getting inside my head. So how did you find the experience? I mean, I can't myself. I mean, I type all the time, every day, I suppose, but I can't actually imagine sitting down and trying to put words down for a book. How did you find that process? Was it easy? Did it come easy, or did you have to work it? Did you find yourself going back and changing things a lot, or how was it?
Again, it's one of those where fate sometimes is a funny old thing, and it throws ways in your world that change your pathways. And I started writing it a couple of years ago, and then it kind of spluttered, and we sort of came to a stalling time within it, and then I sort of came back to it, and then I stalled again, and there was rewrites along the way. And so it was a process over a couple of years, on and off, but I had it about sort of 2/3 done, and unfortunately my dog had an accident, and he ended up basically being in a crate for 8 weeks. Oh, wow. And he had this major operation on his leg and wasn't allowed out, but that meant that instead of being out with the dog for hours on end, I was literally going out and doing what I needed to do, and being with the dog the rest of the time. So rather than just put that as dead time, I thought, well, okay, that's a perfect opportunity to actually finish the book. And so I gave myself a set target every day, and I sat there every day until that target was reached. And then obviously the learning curve of getting it copyrighted, edited, and all the other stuff that goes with it, and getting it actually published and out there. And so that's what I did within that time frame, and I gave myself that 8-week window to get that done, which basically forced me to actually finish it and get over the finishing line, because again, so many new things to learn, and so many points along the way where you could just sort of run out of steam, if you will. So having that 8-week window was actually a blessing in disguise.
Excellent. So can you tell us the name? This was the first book you're talking about now, is it, this one?
Yeah, so the book itself is called Modern Samurai, a revealing look at the world of the private security industry. Now, it's called Modern Samurai because my club is called Modern Samurai Martial Arts, not because I actually believe I'm the reincarnation of a middle-aged warrior kind of thing. Because there's been the odd Facebook troll coming out with that kind of nonsense.
Of course, that's the internet for you, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm aware that I'm a middle-aged, slightly portly fat man now. I mean, that's kind of the way the world works.
But it wouldn't be a good book title, that would it?
No, not really. No. So it was actually called Modern Samurai because that's what my club is called. So that was the reason behind that. And realistically, the book itself is just a mismatch of stories and people that have been met along the way, and interesting little anecdotes and things. And it's, a lot of it is quite humorous. And I was really amazed by the positive feedback that I got from people, because obviously with your first anything, when you put it out there into the world, you never quite know how it's going to be received.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember with this podcast, well, not this episode, but when I first started doing these, the majority of people were, overwhelmingly supportive and like, yeah, this is great, you should keep it. And you always have that little bit of doubt in your head, they're just saying that or whatever. But I kept hearing these positive. But then, of course, I got that one email from somebody. I can't remember what he said now. This guy said just a load of rubbish and under a false name. And I'm like, and this was the first day, and I'm thinking, Christ, that didn't take long, did it? So we all get them, don't we? So do you feel this is something that you'll follow up on, and do you have plans to write more? Any ideas?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually writing more books even as we speak. I've got sort of a couple more ideas and a few sort of half-finished things. I've got a couple of ebooks out. I'm doing a child safe series.
That's great.
Predominantly for sort of kids regarding self-defense, anti-bullying, online safety, all kinds of things like that. So there are a series of ebooks. There's a few of those out already. There's a few more that are being worked on as we speak. And that again goes in conjunction with the school stuff that I do and things like that. So those are out. There's obviously the blogs and things as well. And I, to be honest with you, I've always enjoyed writing, but like a lot of other people, I wasn't really sure of how it would be received, if you will. But then, you look back and you look back to sort of Jeff Thompson, who is an absolute inspiration and is somebody that, you can look at and say, well, if somebody like Jeff can do it and become incredibly successful with it, then it is open to everybody. Absolutely. Isn't it? And so
yeah, as people say, it's that getting out of your way thing, isn't it? We wouldn't be sat here having this conversation now if I'd have carried on listening to that voice in my head saying, "Oh no, don't do a podcast. Nobody will listen to it." And you kind of have to get out of your own way, don't you? And dare to give it a go. And I think again, and it all ties in nicely back to the start when we're talking about the discipline side of it as well, and giving it a go and then sticking with it. That's the hard bit, isn't it? Sticking with it and not going, but it's not quite worked. Stick with it and keep going and keep going and keep going and make it work. In a conversation that we had not too long ago, you mentioned some charity work, and I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your involvement and who it's with, and what sort of things you're doing.
Well, that's something that started about 10 years ago with this particular thing. We do a number of different things, but the school one is with a charity called Stand Against Violence, which is a national charity that was set up by a guy called Adam Fouracre. His brother Lloyd, unfortunately, was brutally beaten to death the day before his 18th birthday.
Jeez.
Which was a really appalling thing to have happened, and that was back in 2005. So on the back of that, Adam set up this charity, and he contacted me about 10 years ago, and he basically asked if I would be interested in working with them. And at the time, it was more of an embryonic idea than anything else. And what he asked me to do was to look towards delivering some self-defense for schools and things within the charity.
Okay.
And so I thought, what a fabulous idea. I mean, I wasn't sure that this young guy who didn't look like he would say boo to a goose could actually sort of, make it happen. But the idea was sound, and so I said, yeah, I'm happy to work. And it turns out that the looks are very deceiving, because he's actually got a backbone of steel. The guy is, what he's gone through is incredible. What the family's gone through is incredible. And to build this charity that is now national, is a remarkable achievement for him. So that was really, really good. And basically over the past sort of 9-10 years, what I've done is I've built a self-defense program that goes into schools up and down the country through the charity that is very specific to the schools and what they actually want. And again, it's something that I hear a lot of people say, and they say, oh, we've got this, the program for schools or the program for kids and things. But quite often it doesn't fit within that, because the self-defense that we're delivering, the idea of it is that it's designed within the charity, within the framework of the charity. And when you talk about somebody that's been beaten to death, then, when I go into the schools, I don't take kick shields and kick pads, and I don't teach people how to punch and kick. I don't show all of those things, because that's not necessarily what we're about. And it fits within the remit of the PHSC requirements, and so it ticks the boxes for the schools, which is really, really important, because a lot of the time people build programs and they do it with what they think the schools will want.
Yeah.
Whereas over, sort of nigh on 10 years now, we've actually honed it down to exactly fit what is required by the schools to fit that criteria. So it's very, very specific.
Yeah, and that's a big part of the battle especially with getting into schools. Obviously you've got an important message to share, but at the same time you've also got to fit the parameters or the needs of what the school are looking for, the pressures that they're having from outside sources to cover X, Y, and Z, or to comply with X, Y, and Z. If you can make that easier for them, then the chances of them having you in, they go up so much more. So yeah, it sounds. So can you tell us a little bit about what sort of things do you cover then? I mean, obviously, I think most people, generally speaking, they do what you were saying. They'll take a load of kit in and they'll have the kids kicking and punching pads. But are you talking more? You discussing specific scenarios or coping strategies, or what sort of things do you do usually?
Okay. Well, there are. How can I put this? There are subjects where I can be quite not confrontational about, but I can give an opinion that can be considered by some to be contentious. Yeah. And this would be one of them. So I remember a few years ago, I was actually delivering an anti-violence talk through the charity, and I was in the school classroom talking to the kids, and I was explaining to the kids how people can die from a single punch, from a single strike. And so I was teaching them that. I was teaching them that there's always a consequence to an action. I was teaching them that the moment that you go physical, it's no longer in your control as to what happens. You might think you're just going to punch this person and teach them a lesson, but they may fall backwards and die. So it's not up to you. And when I'm teaching these very valuable lessons to teenagers who are going to be making these choices for real, I look out the window to see a local martial arts instructor wandering up the pathway with these two great carrier bags full of focus pads and kick shields. And he was actually supposed to be delivering self-defense. Now, what the school had done is they just booked this local guy. No offense to him, as by the way, I don't mean it like that. But they just booked this local martial arts instructor to come and deliver self-defense within this day, not understanding that what he was going to be delivering was basically a martial arts class.
Yeah.
And so he turned up with his pads, and they did some basic, punching and kicking and things like that. And it totally went against what we were trying to get across with the anti-violence stuff, because, if I'm teaching somebody how to strike somebody, and I'm not to say that isn't, the way forward. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can't preemptive strike or strike when necessary, all the rest of it. But what I'm saying is there are far more useful things that you can teach the kids than just that. And something I was told many years ago, which really just holds true for me, is that if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every problem starts looking like a nail.
Like that.
And so that was said to me, and it's something that rings true. So what I tend to do, what we've done as a program, is we've built basically. We talk about some conflict management stuff. We talk about what happens to the body. We talk about, basic body language, the way communication actually really works. We talk about avoidance. We talk about escape. We talk about soft skills. We do physical skills. We do breakaways. We do some controls. We do things like that. So it's a rounded sort of thing with regards to the knowledge that we get in, because normally it's done over a format of the whole school year, and you get like an hour and a half group, so you can only get so much information into that time anyway. And so I'd rather get all that into them, because it's a bit like learning how to cross the road, and this is where martial arts and self-defense for me take separate routes. If you look at martial arts, it's basically dealing with getting hit by a car. It's the physical, isn't it? It's those skills. Whereas when you're teaching a child to learn to cross the road, you actually teach them to stop, look, listen, and avoid getting hit by the car in the first place, which I would say is far more valuable.
Absolutely, that's I like that. Good analogy. I like that. It's a good one. Yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I mean, I don't, as a rule, generally speaking, go in and do any sort of self-defense based stuff in schools, because it's not my skill set, so to speak. It's not my background. And as you say, martial arts and self-defense, yes, they're interlinked, but in reality they're also, as you say, they're very different. But that said, whenever they do ask them to go in, quite often most years I get asked to do. It's like an end of year thing with the kids before they go into A level, so they just finished the GCSEs, and they have like a rotating day where they try different things out. And I always insist. I say, look, I'll come in and teach. They want me to do the pad work and stuff, but I want you to give me a good section of time to actually explain to them, what's the legal side of things as well. I don't want to go and arm them with it. Well, say arm them, but show them these techniques. And 10 minutes later, they're outside kicking each other in the face or whatever else. To understand that there's cause and effect. There's two sides to this, and to understand the legalities of it as well. As they say, knowledge is power, isn't it? So, So I also I believe you just, if memory serves, like myself, you've started to try out online stuff as well, online teaching and courses. Did you tell us anything about that as well?
Yeah. Sorry, could I just jump back to your last point a minute first?
Yeah, of course you can. Go for
it. With regards to the legalities.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something again that I find is lacking with a lot of people sometimes, because you get people that are teaching self-defense but don't actually fully understand what it is they're doing. And I say, I'm not disregarding or dismissing anybody, but the legalities of it are really important. I quite often see people breaking arms off and stabbing people several times with their own knife and all kinds of crazy stuff, which looks excellent on YouTube clips, no two ways about it. But even if you are found innocent at the end of the day, that you didn't do anything wrong, you're still looking at 12, 18 months through an incredibly difficult court case that's going to wreck your family life, it's going to wreck your work life, it's going to mess with your mental health. The repercussions on those kind of things are incredible, and that often isn't looked at anywhere near enough, I don't think. So yeah, the legalities of it really, really important. I mean, that's one of the things with the online stuff. Going back to that, that I'm trying to do, because what I tend to find is the time that I've been doing martial arts, working in security, being around all these kind of things, and working as a bailiff and all kinds of stuff like that. It's if you like, given me a very specific way of looking at the martial arts and violence, for want of a better description, and so. For me, the idea of doing the online stuff and also trying to do more seminars and things like that, and actually going out there, not as a standalone thing. The idea isn't for me to go, hey, I know more than everybody else, and this is, you've got to follow my way kind of thing. That's not it. The idea is to say, well, hey, look, you've got a very specific grounding in what you do, and you're very good at what you do, but here's some add-on things. Yeah. Here's some ways to make it, maybe workable in a different environment a little bit. Here's some ways to make it that bit more useful in certain environments, and just other ways of looking at things. So the idea with the online stuff was basically to reach more people, for starters. If you think about a physical class, they've got to be at a certain place at a certain time. There's only X amount of people you can fit into a room. Yep. With regards to online stuff, it's out there, it's in the ether, it's evergreen. It can touch 10 people or 10,000 people. That's one of the beauties of it. And the realities of it is I'm not getting any younger. And the truth be told, it's something that I would like to get down and get a record of before I'm too old and knackered to do it, basically.
Yeah, no, I completely empathise with that 100%. I mean, I think there's a lot. I mean, I'm obviously going to be a little bit biased as well, because I have an online system too. But that being said, the things you've just said there, I completely understand where you're coming from. I had the experience with mine. What was the final nudge for me? I was actually teaching at a charity event. And I did something that previously I'd done thousands of times, never had a problem, hadn't done it for a while, did it, and nearly, no joke, nearly destroyed my right knee completely. I was very, very, very lucky that I got away with it, with the words of the physio that I spoke to afterwards. And he said, "You've got extremely lucky with this one, to stop being so stupid." And I thought, he's absolutely right. I need to get this documented now. Because there's going to come a point, it might be next week, it might be next year, it might be another 10 years, I might not be able to do this, and I'd much rather get it recorded and have it available for people to access now, and take a little bit of the negativity from people that don't like it, than focus on the people that don't get the online stuff and don't like it and are negative about it. Oh, it's not proper teaching, blah blah blah. I'd rather not listen to them, and then however many years down, and think, I wish I'd done that. it's
Yeah.
better that way around. And
Oh, absolutely.
and the amount of positiveness, the things, the positive feedback I've had from people, and I'm sure you've had the same, that said, oh, thanks for sharing that. I've struggled to find. So I know I'd love to be able to get out to train, but I can't with work or with family commitments or whatever else. It gives them that accessibility, and with the internet being full of so much cat videos and whatever else, it's nice to actually have something on there that's benefiting somebody in some way, even if it's only a small amount of people. It's a positive, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of those where, and I've said about this before. It's the truth of the matter is, martial artists in general, we have to be dragged kicking and screaming to move forward with anything, don't we?
Absolutely.
That's the truth of the matter. But when you look at it, there isn't a single thing in this world where people don't use video tutorials. If you're going to learn to be a fighter pilot or a brain surgeon or even a scaffolder or a brickie, there's tutorials to YouTube for everything now, and most actual training packages in any walk of life. You want to learn to play guitar, you get your online courses, and it's recognized as a very useful training aid, and that's what it is. It's a training aid. It's not a don't bother going to a club and physically learning this stuff. It is a aid. It's an add-on. It's another thing towards the whole. It's not the whole in itself.
Absolutely. So, what's next for Matt, and how can people go about finding out all the different things we've talked about today as well? Before I forget to ask.
Right. Okay. Well, there's obviously the Facebook pages. There's my obviously just look for Matt Stait. YouTube channel, again, stick Matt Stait and it's fine. Just Google my name, you'll get lots of different stuff. There's the blog and everything. So there's all sorts of stuff on there. I mean, I'm more than happy to be contacted. I'm looking forward to getting out more into the world, because that's something that I've sort of not done up to this point, and I now feel that that's something that I would actually actively try and do more of. Because as I said, what I do is more of an add-on than a system, and so I don't claim to have this overarching knowledge of everything. But what I do know is that, with all the years of work in security, working frontline and various things, being in very volatile, confrontational, violent situations, then that has given me a certain way of looking at martial arts, which I think can have a lot of value for different people. But then you get the problem with that sometimes people aren't willing to accept that there's a gap in knowledge sometimes. So that's something that I'm really looking to do. So just basically Google me, look for me on Facebook. I'm quite happy to chat and answer any questions and reaching out to people. I mean, if we look at the Richard Smith's weekend, the other weekend, the FBMA stuff, that was a fantastic weekend. It was really, really enjoyable. Some really great instructors on that. I know he's doing really well selling out this time, but again, the next one's in March and well worth trying to get onto. But my point with that is that I was one of the instructors there, and there were a number of different instructors doing various things, some very traditional Japanese arts, some Filipino arts and all that. But they all had the same sort of, mechanics. They all had the same way of doing things, just their different nuances to it, and that's the joys of what we're talking about here. Is it's not right or wrong, it's just a different way of looking at something.
Absolutely. No, it's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's absolutely flown by. That's been about 45 minutes, believe it or not. It's absolutely whizzed. Lots to think on. As always, guys, everybody listening in right now, if you have any feedback, if you have any questions or anything and you want to fire them over to Matt, obviously you can go to him direct, but if you want to go through myself or through the Facebook group or whatever, you are more than welcome to do so. Matt, thank you very much for your time. Really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
Fantastic. And we will chat very soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Sam.
Bye now.
Enjoy our podcast? Please remember to subscribe, rate and review Kickback with Chris on iTunes today.
So thanks again to Matt for his time today. I'm sure you'll agree. Great chat. Some good points raised in there, actually. I do go into this with some notes, some questions that I have prepared. I always try to do that as best I can. But the conversation was flowing in such a way that we actually moved away from quite a lot of those questions that I had planned, and it was a good conversation and some good points there. If you have any feedback on anything that we spoke about, as always, you can get in touch with us via the website kickbackpodcast.com when the thing's working, because our website hosts are utter garbage at the minute. But anyway, I won't name them for obvious reasons. But yeah, if you want any feedback, get in touch with us through the website, or you can get me on Facebook or text or whatever, all the usual methods, and I'll be sure to pass it on, or get another conversation going within the podcast group itself. As always, if you go to the show notes, you can check out all the links to the various things that Matt brought up and spoke about, all the different things, his publications, his courses, workshops, all that sort of stuff. It will be in the show notes, so you can go along there and check it out. So coming up next, we have Mr. Matthew Chapman, who's going to be talking to us all things martial arts business. What I will say, a little cheeky plug for him before we go to it. His new kickboxing syllabus actually launched today, which I picked up a copy of. I've been having a little look at it myself for my school. Always good to check out different ideas, new things you can bring into class. And what I will say about this course is it's been done in such a way that if you're just wanting a complete ready to sort of plug and play kickboxing course to put into your school, then Matt's done all the work for you. If you're looking for something that you can sort of swap out and change, add your own bits in, take some things out, that sort of thing, it's been done in a way that you can actually do that. So if you're interested in finding out some more about the course, I'll pop the link in the show notes as always. I do believe that Matt actually posted a link in the Facebook group. Failing that, if he didn't, I'll actually go in there myself and post a link to it so you can check it out. I know he currently has some offers going on there. I don't know how long they're going to last for, so you might need to be quick. Go and get it before the offers run out. But yeah, definitely worth having a look at. If you're in a full-time school, either with existing syllabus or you're looking to add something to maybe a black belt program, or just to you got some dead space, you're looking at putting a new session in, then this will definitely be worth taking a look at. So, without any further ado, we'll get on now to a weekly chat with Matt, and let's see what we've got to learn this week. Oh, and always get those pens and paper ready.
Enjoy our podcast? Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review Kickback with Chris on iTunes today.
Okay, so joining us, as always, at this time in the show, we have Mr. Matthew Chapman for our weekly Matt Chat. How are we doing today, sir?
Very, very good. It's sunny and warm where I am, so I'm happy.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's freezing here. You in Barbados or something? Nah, and I've actually got the heating on in my gym today. I'm not cold.
Oh no, it's nice and warm down here.
Weird. I'm in the wrong part of the country.
Part of the country, clearly. Southeast.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that's true. You've thought about that one. Cool. So, what we're going to be talking about today?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about retention because of the time of year that we're at right now. Obviously, classes are getting full, the marketing's working, and everyone's quite happy. But of course, your next problem once you fill your classes is keeping the students there for as long as possible. So we'll talk about retention.
Oh yeah, time-old problem. This one, isn't it? This one's been around, and I know some people. There's very different opinions on the whole retention thing, but it's something that whether we like it or not, we all have to think about. Because if you don't, then, well, you don't have any students to retain anymore, do you? Class is empty.
Yeah, it's kind of the most important thing if you think about it, because there's no point in advertising and getting 50 students turn up if 51 leave the next month. You're constantly scrabbling and having to work, too hard to get new students in. So retention is essential.
Yeah, and it can be as well. I mean, I'll be completely honest, as I always am with this. When my school had been running full time for sort of 5-6 years, I really didn't focus on it as much as I should, and I always assumed that my retention was really good. And then when I actually systemized everything and I had a process in place and I was keeping track of things, I mean, my retention wasn't horrific, but it wasn't as good as I thought it was.
No, that's right. Yeah,
I think that's probably the same for quite a lot of people as well. Really, if they'd scare themselves if they actually looked at their stats properly. So, what sort of ideas did you have in mind for the people out there?
Well, retention is key in a martial arts school. As I mentioned, it's just vital to make sure that you keep students training as long as possible for their benefit. And also for your benefit as the school owner, business owner, for their benefit, because, no one's really going to benefit from martial arts if they only train for 6 weeks, for example. Yeah. It's not going to make any difference. They're not going to really learn anything. It's not going to massively improve their fitness. They're not going to notice any sort of change in their life. So it's in our students' interest for them to train as long as possible. Mm-hmm. And obviously, as a business owner, it's in our interest to help them train as long as possible and stick around as long as possible. So it's kind of important to understand that it's not just about making money for the business. It's also about, a student needs to be with you 6 to 12 months to sort of get any sort of benefit from training. So that's the first thing I think is most important.
Yeah, and that can be a really tricky phase as well for a lot of people, can't it? Just the initial 3 to 6 months, getting them through that phase. The sort of honeymoon period of, we love the idea of martial arts. Oh crap, we've got to do lots of hard work to get good at this. It's kind of getting them over that initial hump can be quite tricky. So I mean, did you have any strategies within your school to help with it?
Yeah, so I have what I call a TLC program, which is tender loving care.
You're tender loving and caring.
Yeah, well, I try to be. So it's basically looking after students during that first sort of 30 days, 30 to 60 days, where it really makes a big difference and helps them stick around longer. So there's a whole sort of system that you can use to ensure that students stay with you for as long as possible during those periods. The first thing I like to do is make sure that I'm contacting them at least once a week to see if everything's all right, if they're happy, if they're enjoying training. That doesn't have to be necessarily calls. Sometimes text messages are better because they're easier for people to pick up and they can get back to you. So I'm making sure I'm staying in contact with them during this kind of first beginning phase of their training. That's quite important.
Yeah, that's a big one we found as well, actually. I mean, it's easy to do. A lot of people go, oh, but it's hard work. But if you get the systems in place, I mean, getting everything set up can sometimes be time consuming. But once it's in place, once we had our text system in place, all the numbers are in there and everything, and we had it set so we could identify the new people for that month. And then it's a standard text message. It's once you send it once to however many numbers it is, and
that's right.
The feedback you get from that is really nice. Oh, if it's parents, we showed little Jimmy the text message was really excited that you'd noticed it'd been, and they get really the same. We do the same with birthdays. Send them a happy birthday email, automated, and they love that. Absolutely love that. It's just that little touch, and it takes no effort anymore these days. It's not really an excuse for it.
No. It's really easy to do. It's really quick, and it makes a big difference to the people. They feel like you appreciate them and that they're valued. So that will help your retention straight away. Okay. I'd also advise mentoring during the first 30 to 60 days, which is where you get a senior student to kind of buddy up with the new beginner if they haven't brought friends with them, because obviously it's quite intimidating walking into a martial arts school by yourself, not knowing anyone. Absolutely. And that's what puts a lot of people off. So we usually get our friendliest sort of senior grades, our most sociable and people who want to help out, and just get them to look after a couple of beginners for the first few months, show them where things are, ask them if they're okay, partner up with them if they're struggling or if they need a partner, and just kind of hold their hand, basically. So that works really well.
Yeah, that's a cool one, actually. I've not really thought about that. We've always got our junior assistants in the classes, which we get them to help out. But it's very easy sometimes as instructors, when you're doing sort of 4, 5, 6 classes a day, to drop into autopilot and just go, okay, everyone find a partner, and then go get some pads, and then the kids, the new ones, like, well, who do I stand with? And
and this is a big problem. A lot of people are very self-conscious, so to be kind of stood around feeling like they're totally lost in the middle of the class puts them off. You got to really take care of the beginners so that they feel supported and safe all the time. I also send them educational weekly emails via my autoresponder about training, because if you've got a big school and you're the main instructor, you don't have time to explain to beginners that nutrition plays an important part in getting fit, that they will experience muscle soreness and how to deal with it, and not to worry about sparring and what equipment they will need. You don't have time to run through this with each beginner. So I use automated emails that get sent out weekly to the new students explaining, welcome to the club, this is how it works, gradings are here, this is why you should do your gradings, what to do about muscle soreness, how to stretch, what's good nutrition, how to stay hydrated, how to get the best from your martial arts training. And this just goes out automatically and conveys the messages that you need to tell them. So that helps.
Good. That's awesome added value as well. I mean, it can be that little nudge They maybe wake up that morning and they may be feeling, because obviously people turn to martial arts for various different reasons, and it might be that day they wake up and they're feeling really down, and I don't think I'm going to go today, and that missing that one class is the start of the snowball effect of, I missed last week, if I don't, I'll have fallen behind, I'm not going to go this week, and then email lands in their inbox, and it just gives them a little sort of, I've been noticed.
Exactly.
I've been noticed. That's nice. They've sent me an email. Oh, that's really cool. They give it a read. They feel good about themselves. I'm going to go now, and it's, definitely. It's all good. I'm liking
That's exactly
that one.
how it works.
Cool.
Exactly how it works. Other things I like to do is I like to do free 15-minute privates with students who I think are struggling or maybe not integrating too well. So obviously watching the beginners classes, you can see the ones that are maybe having a hard time coordination-wise, maybe fitness-wise. So I'll just say to them at the end of the class, hey, would you like a free 15-minute private to, work on that particular technique? And then I start to build a bit more relationship with them, a bit more rapport with them. And that really works well, because then they're working with the chief instructor and, feel appreciated and that we care.
Yeah, then they feel special. You've noticed them,
Yes.
And we all want that attention, don't we? From time to time.
Yes.
It's what we all do, whether we want to admit to it or not, really. Hence, social media being as big as it is. We all like a little bit of attention from time to time. Cool. I'm liking these. I'm writing these down. I always do this every week. It's like a mentoring session for me every week. I sit down and write all these down. Excellent stuff. Excellent.
The next thing I like to do is I like to tell them when their first grading is. So I set a goal for them.
Right.
So 3 months, 4 months in the future, you'll be testing for your first belt, and this is what is involved, and by then you'll be able to do this and this. So I'm pre-framing them that they will grade and that they will be ready by then, and that by kind of agreeing to, that's cool, yeah, I'd like to do that, they've kind of set in their minds that they're still going to be around in 3 months' time.
Yes. Good idea. And there's obviously some students will have that worry about gradings as well. That sort of, oh no, I'm going to be put on the spot, and if I get it wrong, and everybody will think this. And
well, I've run through how we do our gradings and all of that, so that they're comfortable with that. It's just like a regular class at my school. So
excellent, loving this. Yeah. Good, some great stuff here. Some great stuff. Hopefully stuff that people out there are listening to now, taking it on board. And actually, I know that they do, because the feedback that they give is always positive on these sections. So cool. Excellent stuff. Lots to be going on there.
So there's lots of things you can do. I've got a list of 30 retention strategies that I've got in an ebook. If anyone wishes to get it, they can go to blackbeltbiz.co.uk, and you can find the retention ebook on there. And it's just packed full of ideas and concepts to help you keep students for longer. Because if you get this stuff right, you then have to do less marketing because your class stays full. So you have to spend less money out. And also, if you get this right, these types of people who you serve to a very high level tend to refer their family, their friends, their co-workers to you. So your marketing budget reduces even further. And at some point, you get to a point like I was at my school, where I didn't need to do any sort of advertising other than referrals and Google, and that was it.
Absolutely, yeah. Spot on. I mean,
if you get service right, it is really good for the business long term.
Yeah, absolutely spot on, because I've been doing this for a while now, and I've noticed myself, with my school, that we focus on the service, providing the best service that we can. We don't get everything right, just the same as nobody does. You don't get every element. We try to, but we found that our retention is good, and as you say, it means that we don't have to advertise as often as some schools are. And I'm not suggesting that anybody that's having to advertise lots is doing anything wrong. They might have a 10,000 square foot gym. They need to fill, to keep the place running, for various reasons. But it is right. If you put time and effort into getting your retention good, it just creates just less headaches. Unless you're working out of a tiny building like I am, which we actually joking aside, we created a really quite a difficult bottleneck effect in that at one point our what we term phase 3, which is our highest grade group, it was the biggest grade group in the entire school. Yeah. So our triangle was sort of the other way round to most schools. Yes. We had a much smaller beginner group and a massive advanced group. And I'm thinking, where am I going to put all these people? Because people kept moving up grades, obviously, and I had nowhere else for them to go.
Well, you're obviously doing a good job if they're sticking around that long.
Yeah, well, You like to think so. That
Yeah.
you know, that or we're just attracting the right people.
Yeah, of course.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Excellent stuff. Okay. Well, thank you as always for your time.
That's all right, mate.
I hope you have a good rest of your week, and we'll catch up next time.
Okay. Cheers, dude. Thanks. Bye.
Bye now.
You're listening to Kick Back with Chris, the martial arts podcast, brought to you by www.onlinekicking.co.uk.
Well, that guy has some good ideas, doesn't he? Never fails to deliver, Mr. Matthew Chapman. Thank you again, as always, sir, for your wisdom. Some good things to think on there. I think it's always good to take a step back sometimes and just review the way that we're doing things as school owners. You know, as I say, my school now has been running it full time 16 years. I've been teaching full time 20 years, and it's so easy to get into these routines where we miss the obvious. Which is one of the reasons why I love to have Matt on for these chats, because it just gives us that opportunity to step back and see these things that are going on. They're completely going over our heads sometimes. So as always, big thanks again to Matt for his time. Going forwards next week. Now, the next episode, we might actually be able to squeeze an additional one in next week. I know I said that before, but I've got a guest coming on, all being well, that hopefully, with the timing of things, it would be good to get them on ASAP. You'll see why when they're on. And I'm actually looking at just switching up the format a little bit next time around. I'm going to just run it by you a little bit now, so anybody that's still with us by the end of the episode here now. Now, joking aside, though, a bit of feedback is always good. I'm looking at swapping things around a little bit so that maybe we do an opening section, a little bit of a news, straight into our topic if we have one, a guest, then another bit of news, then into our weekly Matt chat, and then some more news to finish, just to spread things out. 'Cause the feedback I've had from a couple of people has been, I really like the podcast, but sometimes the news section's a bit too long and that sort of thing. So, whereas I do obviously want to give the community a shout out and help people to promote good things that they're doing, at the same time, I don't want that to be putting off people, waiting for the guests. I know with the podcasts that I listen to, some of the bigger ones, I get it. They've got to have that sort of product placement in there. They've got to do those ad sections, and a lot of podcast apps now, they sort of like have a 20-second fast forward option on it, or 15 seconds, so you can sort of like blitz your way through the advertising sections. So there is that as an option. But how would you feel, the listeners, about me sort of changing up the order a little bit? If you've got any ideas or any feedback, as always, get us on the Kickback with Chris Facebook group through kickbackpodcast.com. Drop me a text, drop me a Facebook message, whatever. Give me some feedback. It's always welcome. And as always, I know I'm battering on about this a lot, but it's super, super important if you can take 20 seconds out to go onto iTunes, search for Kickback with Chris Martial Arts Podcast, and give us a star rating and a review. I'm not even asking you to make up overly positive reviews. Just give us a star rating and review. It helps us out massively to increase our reach, so that more people hear. The more people are listening, the more people downloading, the more things we can do with the show going forwards. Hope you all have a great rest of your week or weekend, or whatever time of the week it is where you guys are at. I hope you're not too cold, obviously, if you're in the other side of the country. I hope you're not too hot, whichever way around it is. And I will catch you all again very, very soon. Thanks again for your support. Chat soon. Bye now.